we've got a more diverse set of perspectives than ever, and that's really cool. Both in terms of age and the angles that people are taking on how to solve problems in the industry and just life perspectives, and it's really cool.
This is the Insurance Technology Podcast, where we bring interesting people from across the insurance ecosystem to discuss and debate technology's impact on the industry. Join us each episode for insights and best practices from industry stewards and tomorrow's innovators.
All right. Well, unbeknownst to Reid, we have taken over his podcast again, and I have welcomed back Mike Albert, who is no stranger to these takeovers. So, Mike, thanks for coming in today and helping us to do this podcast.
What's up, Christen? Yeah, anytime. Unbeknownst, because he's got his feet up in Key West or something.
Probably. At this time of year, I would be in Key West if I had a house.
We should all be so lucky.
So the reason that we decided to do this is Mike was recently on a panel at an industry event on the future of commercial lines.
I would characterize it as the panel.
The panel. Actually, we had some heavy hitters on that panel.
You're telling me.
Although I think my favorite part was just the age demographics across. I mean, we had, what was it when you guys were talking about the concerts? We had someone that went to Live Aid and all the way to someone who wasn't even born during Live Aid.
Yeah, well, that wasn't even Live Aid. God, what did I say? I think I said I said my first concert was Metallica in 1992, the Black Album tour, and Raghav was like, I wasn't even born in 1992. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, dude.
So we covered the gamut in terms of generations that are in the insurance industry, which I think is good because, everybody is the future of commercial lines is going to involve everybody, those that have been around and those that are coming up into the industry. Right. So
totally. Hey, and that's, not for nothing. Like, I think, both of us have been around the industry a while. Like, that is kind of a relatively new trade, I think. We've got a more diverse set of perspectives than ever. And that's really cool, both in terms of age and, the angles that people are taking on how to solve problems in the industry and just life perspectives. And it's really cool.
Yeah, it is. I definitely, again, I know you said the panel, but it is definitely one of my favorites that I've sat in just because of the different perspectives. We had agent, carrier, technology provider, but then just the different, demographics that we
I put an asterisk next to the panel, like the panel, if you're into commercial lines connectivity, kind of a niche audience, but whatever.
So one of the first topics that you guys took on and, we went off in some different areas, but one of the first topics that came up was, how the commercial distribution experience has changed. And, I know that you were part of the conversation, but, what do you think has changed and where we're going?
Well, certainly a lot has changed. It's certainly more tech-enabled than it's ever been. But that being said, anybody doing it every day knows how many gaps are still out there. And that was an interesting part of our conversation that we get some new stuff, some great stuff out there. Raghav and his team at Tarmica, for example, have done some fantastic things in the commercial lines quoting side. But there's still so many gaps. There's so much to do. And that's where the panel discussion went.
Now we will get down to the topic at hand. So let's talk about commercial lines. And before we dive into the roadmap or where we're going and the future, I'd love to just hear from the folks here on the panel about kind of where we've come from, really, or how far we've come along. So in the past 5 years, in your perspective, and I'll start with Donna here, how do you feel that commercial distribution experience has changed? And what improvements really has the industry made in the more recent years?
I would say there's a lot of new technologies, the market appetite, your Ask Kodiak, adding Tarmica in there. That whole experience has really improved the commercial lines. I've worked with real time back when it first came out in 1998, and where it is today, it's kind of like it's there for inquiries, but for the rating, it just never really worked right. So I think we're finally in the right direction for commercial lines, and then adding, of course, Indio in there too for the more complex submissions and having that capability.
How about you, Ray?
Sure. I think the way I look at it is the improvements have been kind of on the new business side, and in particular, kind of the sharing of information or data between parties. Rating platforms have seen more and more carriers actually start to be interested. So I do think there has been some incremental improvements. I do think there's a long way to go, particularly around classification and question sets and things like that, as we tend to clutch onto our underwriting guidelines and things and haven't quite moved the needle as much as I think is needed to deliver a customer experience that, all of our customers are expecting from us.
Anybody else have anything to add there?
Not enough.
Not enough.
So we've got a long way to go. So yeah, we've made some inroads, as you said, mostly on the new business side. But man, there's so much opportunity to do better in commercial lines, and that's it's both reason for frustration and excitement. I mean, there's work to be done.
I would say probably we're getting there pretty good with the small commercial lines. It's when we're getting into the larger type of markets. It's still a struggle. It's still very manual. Trying to get downloads on those large ones just don't seem to work right. Being able to send those submissions, there has to be some improvement for those large markets. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think that's a next step of something that needs to be worked on.
I think just to build upon it, I think you look at two things. It's friction and efficiency, right? So it's the friction that you create for your customer, whether it's the long applications, additional supplementals, whatever it may be, that they're having to try to gather all this information for you, some of which is, publicly available or not. But, just the kind of rekeying of all that information in, and then the efficiency within your agency to both place, to handle renewals and service these accounts. I think that's the part that I'm most excited to see. What comes next is more on the servicing and the actual kind of life cycle of a policy. It's easy to focus on that new business. It's kind of the sexy stuff that everyone wants to kind of go at first. But for your operations, really, it's going to be like, how well can you actually service that customer and how efficient can you be doing that, particularly as you get smaller and smaller in terms of size of risk, which, ultimately is a very large segment of businesses in America are really fitting into that small micro space.
All right. So next topic that I think you had actually said you were very passionate about, and it's interesting because I had not thought about the NAICS as a topic, but after that panel, the amount that we have actually gotten, questions or requests or how do we use it and why do we use it actually seem to be almost highlighted now that since we've come back. And maybe it's just I wasn't hearing it before the panel, but I guess where I wanted to ask you is why why are you so passionate about the NAICS stuff, and then how is your passion, if you will, helping us to make the process better?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is sad that I'd be passionate about class codes. But there's nothing in commercial lines more important than characterizing the business correctly, because in doing so, you're setting yourselves up to really understand the risk that you're taking on as an insurer, or that you're helping a customer with as an agent. And so all of it's got to fall in line. And so for so long, the industry has always thought of class codes in a couple of different ways, like on the front of an accord form, there's a box for a SIC code or a NAICS code. And you get down into a specific line of business, and there might be line of business specific codes. Like they're this weird, like complexity / just thing you got to fill out. But if you're thinking about trying to do things differently and more elegantly, if you're able to classify something in an industry agnostic way at the top, there's a lot that can happen, from better marketing to customers, better at cross-selling to customers, understanding the full profile so we can get them the right lines of business, and more efficient and more streamlined underwriting. So I always think of it, the underwriting process, like dominoes. And, if you set that first domino up as classification and get it to fall correctly, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And that means using modern class codes. That's why we like NAICS. It's new. It replaced SIC. The industry still uses a lot of SIC, but SIC hasn't changed in a lot of years. And we talked about that on the panel.
Yeah, that it was new during Live Aid.
Yeah, precisely, exactly.
NAICS is kind of a hot topic for me. It's one of these things I could talk about all day. NAICS and SIC. Fun fact, I don't know how much of the insurance industry realizes SIC codes ended in 1987. A lot of people know this, but a lot of people don't. They haven't been updated since 1987. And if you think about how much the world has changed, the economy has changed since 1987, it's really remarkable. Like if
Raghav wasn't even born.
Raghav wasn't even born.
And I was still recovering from Live Aid.
There you go, right. Just covered in cherry Coke. So what that ends up meaning, again, soapbox topic for me, is it like so much in SIC land falls into these NOC, not otherwise classified codes. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys all know this, which means that carriers don't know what they're on the hook for, and agents have poorly classified risks out of necessity. And so one of the things that we've really focused on doing in Ask Kodiak is building out a model. For those of you that are familiar with it, we use the NAICS model. We keep NAICS up to date. It gets incremented every 5 years. Again, I told you I'm excited about this topic. And we get all the way down to the sub-description level underneath the 6-digit code. So we get very, very prescriptive. That's really important because it allows our carrier partners to be very specific. Reid's got products on there.
So I think something that came up during the panel, and I think every time you talk about commercial lines distribution, it does come up is, it seems like there's a lot of focus on small commercial, however you define small commercial. And so we started getting questions from the audience about, what about mid to large size commercial and how can we help there?
We can do a lot. So it's a very different workflow. It's a much more collaborative workflow. And the panel had some good discussion on this. Ray had some important thoughts about some of the things going on in mid-market. He's touched it a lot. There's no reason we can't do more there, but more means something different than it does in small commercial, where small commercial, is sort of like super homeowners or super personal lines. Mid-market, large market commercial tend to be more bespoke risks, higher degree of collaboration, more complexity in the underwriting process. Automation, largely it means workflow. It means better collaboration, more secure ways of sending things back and forth, keeping track of status, making sure this like complex work that a team of people who are distributed across a variety of organizations do together is packaged up in a way that makes sense.
All right, now we're having a few questions coming in around mid to large commercial. So Susan had asked, what about mid-size to large-size commercial? Any plans to create a rating platform for that? We don't have a small book, or a large book, I should say, for small commercial. And I'll do a quick answer from the Ivan side, and I'd love to hear from the panel here too. But I know that this is an area where the carriers that we've been talking with are really trying to think through how should this work? How do we build this out? How do we really facilitate sort of the movement of the risk if it starts small, but then it actually ends up being more of a mid, or do we just call it all risk? So I think there's a lot that needs to be thought out there, but there's definitely a lot of interest and a lot of movement in that direction, both on the applied side and also Ivan's and the carriers. So I'd be interested to hear from others on the panel just as far as where your perspective on building out rating more for the mid as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've noticed with mid-market is that it's the base question set for small, mid, and large essentially remains untouched. It's the same. We need to collect the same initial data points to quote a mid-market account. So through Tarmica, for example, we're starting to see some larger accounts be quoted. We get premiums up to $200,000, $300,000, but that doesn't cover all your mid-market. That's really your vanilla mid-market business.
We're taking the Cliff Notes version of this panel, but I think one of the important topics that was taken on, and we definitely put it on Donna as the broker on the panel, but I think we all are impacted by it, and it's the change management. It's the pushback from the agent. It's the ability to get technology, whether it's adopted by the agency or adopted by the carrier, to really change those processes. And I guess have you seen things that have helped to get adoption, or have you seen, or on the flip side, things that, you've seen happen that if we fixed could make adoption a lot better?
Yeah, definitely. They're sort of one and the same. The key thing here is it can't just be change for change's sake. If you go at the highest level, an agency is trying to make money every day, right? They're trying to be efficient in what they're doing. They're trying to help their customers. So if the new stuff, just the change, helps them do that, which is to say, be more profitable and be more responsive to their customer base, there's a built-in incentive to use it. Adoption helps flush out the good stuff from the mediocre stuff really fast. Because if you're adding value, you're an inevitability.
And maybe, Donna, you can share with your experience in trying to help push change over time. What would you recommend to the agencies who don't necessarily see all of their carriers in the platform today?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've got to reach out to them. The more people that reach out to the carriers and keep asking is the only way that we can get to the next level. I know I've spent half my career just dealing with carriers, trying to get them to use all of the latest technologies. And unless they hear it from all their agents, they go, oh, I don't hear this enough. So they don't move forward with it. Meanwhile, everybody does want it. They're just not hearing it. So we need to keep our voices loud for whatever we need. And that's the only way we're going to go to the next level.
Quickest way to get their attention is to start deprioritizing them because they won't play ball, right? You're going to get a reaction very quickly then when they see production or something like that dip. Not always easy to do, but you run your agency the way and you work with the partners that are willing to help you become more efficient.
All right. Well, now let's talk about, I think, an interesting topic when it comes to introducing new technology, which I know people have been talking about commercial lines quoting and improving that process over the years, but I think we're still in the relatively new state as far as driving adoption across the industry. Donna, what are your thoughts as far as the importance of change management in the agency to get a new technology like Tarmica adopted and used within the agency so you can see that success and it becomes really part of your day-to-day workflow? What have you done at your agency and what would you recommend to those out there as well?
Yeah, this is a hot topic at my agency right now because we are just bringing all of our agents onto Epic. We went our first go live in August and we're bringing them over every month. And we're trying to get them to use everything that they possibly can as far as downloads, as far as quoting, whatever. And we bought everything you can buy from Applied. So we've got Indio in there. We've got it all. And it's a lot of it, it's each of the offices that we're dealing with. It's a top-down approach. If we cannot get the agency president to say, yes, you have to do this, it's not going to work. I ran into a situation with one of our agencies that didn't like one of the commercial lines downloads. So they said, turn them all off, because we turned everybody on for commercial download. Well, they were a big agency, so we had to make them happy, and I turned it off temporarily. I'll never do that again. But it came from the top. The top person was complaining, and it just continued like a cancer through the whole office. And you have to have the top to say no. If there's an issue, let's address it. Let's work on correcting it. Let's work with the carrier if there's an issue. But don't turn off technology. Turn on everything you can, because the more you use things, the more you find if there is a problem, let's get it taken care of. If you just say, I'm just not going to do it, then we can't get it resolved in the industry. So I just say top-down approach. Everyone has to be engaged, and that will make things more successful.
So has anybody else experienced the sort of the frustration or pushback when you're trying to introduce a new technology in your agency? And I see some nodding heads. Has anybody done anything different or had a sort of a different experience or outcome than what Donna's shared here? You just have to kind of push it along, and top-down approach is the best way to get it. Yeah, okay.
Oh, and I'll add testing. Test. I always say that any new technology, don't just roll it out. Test it with a small group, but before you have a whole bunch of people trying to use something and it doesn't work right, maybe there's a glitch or something in there. Test it. And
Ray, has there been anything that you've done from your point of view as a carrier just to help push that or create awareness among your agencies?
I don't know if there's anything that I've actually done. There's a few things that I've learned, and I would say it's patience. I would like to think that it's like you flip a switch and everyone's great and everything's fine, and it never works that way. Even in a startup where, you feel like you're going a million miles an hour, things can move slowly too. I think it's just the nature of the industry in some sense and just the nature of humans in general. So having that patience and just kind of iterating to get there and not selling it as like the end all be all perfect solution for everything that you have to do. But having it more focused at like, this is a solution for this specific task, like, rating or whatever it may be. That's generally where you get a little bit better adoption or better usage. You're always going to have people that won't. And then that's when sometimes you have to maybe turn off the old way that they did it, right? Like carrot and the stick type deal.
The last one, which for someone sitting in the audience, we probably could have gone on for a long time after the panel. But, we started to talk about the importance of data. But because of the importance of data, the whole topic of standardization came up. And how do you allow for data to work? And I guess, so this panel itself was, earlier this year. I guess, is there any additional things that you would add to the standardization or the feelings that around standardization that the industry should be thinking about to add color to that piece of the discussion?
The discussion was interesting because we talked about standards, and I think I made the counterpoint that standards aren't necessarily even all that great. I say that coming from the experience of having built software on insurance standards for a long, long time. And, really good documentation of a non quote unquote standard solution is generally just as good. What you find in insurance, again, we go into this in the panel, is that it tries to serve too many masters, these standards. And as such, can't accommodate everything, but also accommodates everything in flexible ways so that it sort of falls apart as a standard. So I'm of the mind that good documentation is as good or better as a standard, but we had some good discussions about this.
So someone asked about the Accord standard, or are they going to move to put everything into what's collected in Accord form? I think there does need to be a standard. There needs to be some standard of data that everyone's collecting the same types of information, the same, quality of information, let's say, but that definitely involves a lot of data sharing, and that involves agencies and carriers alike working together to make sure that they have insights into everything. So I think that's one thing that's not really solved in our industry yet, and data is a buzzword and everyone talks about it, but we actually need to start sharing additional information and working together to find out how we can make this all connect and work properly.
I'm going to go counterpoint. I think good documentation is better than a standard. Because I think what we've heard, a couple of times here, number one is that we need a knowledge base about some of these download issues. It's a really good idea. And that gets into this notion of when you actually start to look at commercial lines data of any reasonable complexity, even the standards, you got to do this around the standards, because there's equally valid ways to do things that both adhere to the standard, but they're different. So that's what actually ends up leading to these issues in download. Mm-hmm. Cool, it was okay to put this coverage here by the standard, but it's also okay to put it here, but the management system's looking for it in position C, all of them are valid to the standard. Yeah, another passionate topic, by the way. Good documentation is, I think, really, really important. And that's an area where I'm hearing loud and clear that we've got, some work to do and some things to do better as an industry around just communicating with each other better about how things work so that we can accommodate them.
My final word is SEMC is not dead. I know I've heard that over and over again. There's no more SEMC. No, it is. It's still valid, 100%. That's what we need. And everyone needs to, in this room, to continue with your voices on asking for a better process, because it's still not where it needs to be. And it never will be unless we continue the fight.
And Donna, can you spell that out maybe for those who may not know?
Single entry multi-company interface. And actually had a website, semc.org, that we had like in 1999. I administered it. and then it died, but it's really not dead. But that's what we need. We want to have one way to do something. Not every carrier has it a different way. Everybody has to do things differently. We want it one way. We may be independent agents doing things differently, but as far as data transmission goes, it should be one way.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time.
So I definitely think that there's lots of topics that we could, expand upon that came out of this future of commercial lines. So speaking of the future, this is probably one of the last episodes for 22 to go out from the podcast. As you look to 2023 and the near future of commercial lines, is there anything that you're hoping to see happen?
Our team at Applied, Ivans, have, I need an elegant analogy here. I'm thinking we've loaded a lot of food onto our buffet plate in Las Vegas in terms of Ask Kodiak and Tarmica and IDP and the things we're doing with Epic Quotes commercial lines. And what's really cool to see is it's all starting to work. And I think you're going to see more of that in 2023. We as a company, and I'm not trying to be a company guy here for this answer, but I have, direct perspective into it. You're going to see this stuff starting to click together, and that's meaningful. That's why we've done all this. I think more broadly as an industry, we're far past the point where folks recognize the need for, digital connectivity. I almost it's cheesy saying digital, but that's the way you do business these days. Everything's got to be real time on the internet, hooked up, APIs, and that's all happening now. It's all real. And it's all coming together. For 2023, 2024, even 2022, it is happening. It's happening right now.
And to those listening, come back for new episodes in 2023. Thanks, Mike.
There it is. See you next year.